designed to reward a player and help them beat challenges. So I absolutely love BioShock. I almost feel bad bringing it up here, but BioShock's a really fantastic game, and one of the features it has is these special resources. It's like a shooter game with these RPG concepts of acquiring and customizing your advantages. And it unfortunately gets into a bit of a difficulty loop because you slowly acquire these special resources, these plasmid powers, special ammo, and you use them when the game gets really tough, and it does get really tough because it has Big Daddies, which are like the greatest AI I've seen in years. The problem is, if you're doing really well, you will rarely feel challenged, and on the few moments that you do feel challenged, you'll have all the special resource stockpiled that you'll just burn through the challenge. And the game's just going to keep getting easier because you keep stockpiling more and more resources that you never fully use. If you're struggling, you get caught in this sort of advantage debt where you're more challenged more often, so you feel the need to go through these resources faster. And you get into this position where every time you're encountering a challenge, you're less prepared for the next challenge. I have about a dozen friends who played this game. I bought copies for them all because I really just wanted to play this game because it's so damn good. And I'd say most of them thought the game was too easy, but a handful thought the game was really, really hard. And when I talked to them about them, this was kind of what I was hearing about. Was like, oh, I always had way too much electrogel to kill the Big Daddies, or I was always scrounging for just a bullet. What's interesting is all 12 of my friends who played the games played it to the end. And they said, even the ones who said it was too challenging said it was never frustrating. It was a lot of fun. And that's because BioShock, so what if it has a feedback loop? BioShock has amazing failure design. It's some of the best I've seen in years. So failure is not inherently bad. It's frustration that's bad. Jesper Juhl is a game designer who did a speech on casual gamers and challenge a couple years ago at GDC, and he had this really eye-opening thing to say about this the study he looked at where they gathered all these casual gamers. They gave them really easy games and really hard games and kind of tested how they responded to them. It's funny that the easy games actually annoyed the casual gamers a lot. They had feedback like, I never felt I had to adapt, or I never had to learn. And they would say, like, if I never saw that game over screen, when I finally beat it, I just didn't really feel like I accomplished anything. So I think it's not the case that casual gamers are truly experience-driven. They're challenge-driven. They just have a much higher demand for good challenge design than hardcore gamers. Hardcore gamers are lazy and will take whatever you give them. So you always want to think about the cost of failing in your game. If you look at a bunch of people play your levels and they, let's say, fail 3 times on average, and it always sets them back 5 minutes, that's 15 minutes of time the player's spending just retreading ground in your level. The casual gamers were turned off by the games where the failure was too frequent, too costly, or just poorly communicated. So there's a lot of ways to make your failure design push your game into the realm of hardcore player only. Casual players, they don't hate to fail, they just don't want to fail senselessly. When someone dies or hits a game over screen in your game, you don't want them thinking, why did I fail? You don't want them thinking, oh, I just lost 20 minutes of my life retreading this part because I died. You certainly don't want them to think, there's no solution, or I don't even know what I should be doing. And if your game just makes people feel dumb, stupid, slow, or old, gamers get enough of that in real life. I love Ninja Gaiden. It's one of my favorite games, and they put the hardest boss at the end of the first level. On the one hand, I appreciate it, because when you finally do beat him, you feel so amazing. It was greater than graduating college. It just felt like a much better achievement than 4 years of, I don't know what the hell I did, played Fallout. The problem is you spend the whole first level fighting chump ninjas that don't really ready you for this, and then when you get there, you feel old, dumb, and stupid and slow, and you don't even really know what you're supposed to do. You weren't trained in a special move to beat him. Now, XCOM is the true lord, and all of the religions are false, but it is a harsh god, and you can spend a whole weekend building up this awesome crew of alien hunters, and then out of the fog of war, a grenade can land and kill your entire squad. And the time cost of that would be, another weekend. And you're just going to go hit reload, because you'd be almost crazy to play the game through without save loading your way through it. That's pretty punishing failure design. And I actually think Demon's Souls does a lot of things right. If you're going to make a hardcore game, advertise how difficult you are, like Demon's Souls does. But here's a game that's challenging to begin with, and then it enlists griefers from the internet to hop into your game and kill you. So yeah, it's really a fantastic game. But if you're going to be that hard, let your players know. Your goal should be making failure fun. I think part of why games are so prolific these days, there's a lot of reasons for it actually, better graphics, but also it's just easier to play and it's easier to fail at games. You want to make sure that the time players spend failing is time well spent. You want them to think like, oh, I died, but at least I kept something in my progression when I died, or I lost, but I learned something, or better yet, I lost and something funny happened. I got a cool serendipitous achievement, or there's just something helpful came of it. So going back to BioShock, why BioShock could be really difficult, but everyone will play all the way through it, is because it had amazing fail design. When you die, you simply respawn back a little ways in the level, and it even keeps the progress of the world. If you were in a fight with 4 splicers and you kill 3 on your way out, when you respawn, those 3 splicers are still dead. So really the only cost to failing is the few minutes it takes you to walk back to where you were. That's fantastic. Puzzle Quest is a great game where it takes like puzzle gameplay and adds in some RPG elements. So it's like you're playing Bejeweled, but your character levels up and you get these cheats. It's like Tetris, but being able to unlock that ability to see 2 pieces ahead. It also has great failure design because you can spend 5 minutes losing a puzzle, but you keep all the golden XP that you're getting with every move, and you may have lost those 5 minutes of progression, but you've kept your 5 minutes of character building, and that's going to make the chance that you'll fail next time slightly less. Now, when World of Warcraft came out, a lot of MMOs had this very punishing death model. You'd spend hours playing the game, and then you'd die, and you'd lose all your gear and have to go find it. You'd lose XP, you'd spend hours picking it back up. WoW took the bold move of saying, you know what, failing doesn't cost you that much. You maybe lose a little bit of money in item wear, but you just walk to a healer, walk back. And that was a great move, because they were saying, yes, there should be a cost to failure, but we want you to spend all your time moving forward, not retreading the same ground. And so I think better fail design is why games are growing more popular, and I think it's also a conscious focus on accessibility. A game's accessible if it can offer the same learning curve to a wide variety of players. When you present these barriers to entry, you create more challenge than really needs to be there. You want to look out for requiring that the player be familiar with other games like it, or filling the controller with options, but then not letting the player remap it. Well, you've just made the game harder for people who have an idiosyncratic way of using a controller. One of my favorite examples of this is Guitar Hero. As long as you have 2 hands, eyes, and ears, you can play Guitar Hero. If you happen to own an HD TV, you'll have a hardware problem. There'll be what you're seeing and what you're hearing would be out of sync. And trying to learn how to play the game on an HD TV can be a pain in the ass. But the developers figured this out, and they wisely put a sync function on the game. Had they not done it, they would have created this accessibility issue where the game was completely enjoyable and for people of all ages, but then people with certain TVs learning it would be hopeless. And I'm always surprised how really smart teams with lots of money and lots of time forget about accessibility. So this is the hacking game in BioShock 2. Fortunately, it's not required for progression, but it requires you to tell colors. That's something I can't do. These are all color-corrected images for different kinds of color blindness. I think it's the upper left one is the regular one. Anyway, the 2 ones at the top look the same to me. And if you have that one on the lower right, it's just impossible. BioShock 2 is a fantastic game, and it does all the things right that BioShock 1 did, but then they throw this at me, and I thought, I will play the most challenging game out there, but if it doesn't have subtitles and my deaf ears miss things, or if you make me tell red from green, you're going to lose my $50. So it's easy to lose sight of the ways that you can add challenge that don't even need to be there. Now, I want to talk about pacing because when I first started my career, I thought pacing was like a narrative thing. I thought the cinematic designer was the one who cared about pacing. But pacing actually has everything to do with difficulty. Bad pacing increases the time cost of failure, especially if you're using a checkpoint save system. If you put your checkpoint before a cutscene, so every time that someone dies, they have to see that cutscene again, that should be criminal. You should put cutscenes after, you should put save points after cutscenes, but before any big moments of challenge. You should also space out your moments of tension and calm. As I was saying with a puzzle game, what you're actually doing isn't so challenging in and of itself. It's the stress the player is under that makes it challenging. If you have the player constantly under the need to act, you're actually going to create a scene that might be more challenging than you really want it to be. I'm not an expert on pacing, but the people who made Left 4 Dead are, and if you haven't played it yet, you ought to take copious notes. It actually has procedural pacing, which is just like magic, but definitely look at that game. I'm going to go briefly into Alpha Protocol to talk for a second, just to talk about this pacing issue. Sega was really supportive of us making this game, and they wanted to make sure that we got focus testing when we were doing the first drafts of our levels so we could iterate on the feedback. We even got biometric feedback, which was cool. Players would play some early builds of our game, and they'd have these little sensors on their head that measured where their eyes went and what their galvanic skin response is and other brainiac stuff. And here's a level of the game that we thought would be kind of easy and kind of compact, and there'd be some sneaking, maybe some combat if you didn't stay too sneaky, some exploration. We thought, this is gonna be easy. Players are gonna coast through it. What you're seeing there is a graph of their mental engagement. So for most of the level, they're completely engaged mentally in the game. They're staring at the screen. They're thinking about it. And when I saw that, I thought it was awesome. I thought my philosophy professor is gonna be so proud that my game makes people think. Problem was, it was actually a really frustrating design. the players were constantly engaged and they never relaxed. And so the stress of everything you were forced to do went up and up and up. So that even though we thought the level was kind of easy, it was actually really frustrating. We knew we needed to go revise it and make it like this, which was a level where we actually really hit all the notes the first time through. Here you're seeing the player kind of go into an engagement state and then dropping back out. I don't know, like they first encounter some combat and they deal with it, and then they're sort of walking somewhere or listening to banter, and then their mind is free to daydream about sandwiches and porn or whatever, and that relaxes them so that the next time there's a challenge, they're fresh and renewed for it. And even though we thought this level was going to be way more challenging, we thought it might actually be so challenging that the players wouldn't like it, they actually really loved the level. And yes, they said it was challenging, but they said it wasn't frustrating, and that was the important part. Sure, there were fail states here, but you were never really like stressed out, and when you did reload, we always brought you back to a good spot for you to like dive right back into it.